God, it's good to be back. I don't know about you all, but I missed getting together and seeing people, being face to face with folks. There's a line in that song as I was walking up. Usually I do the Dire Straits, money for nothing, chicks for free. I want my MTV. That's usually my walk up. But there's a line in that song that I just walked up to where the future's open wide. And that's my message today. That the recovery, I'm going to read this verbatim, the recovery from this self-induced economic shutdown is going to have plenty of challenges, just like all economic recoveries do. The rate of recovery is going to be very different in different segments of the economy, very different for individual companies in each industry, but the strength of the overall recovery is going to be far faster and far more robust than anybody is currently anticipating. Sure, there's going to be segments of the economy that are going to get left behind. Individual companies, individual segments, but many of them were previously already in trouble, and they're just getting turned into the buggy whip manufacturers of this cycle. But every single economic cycle out there creates buggy whip manufacturers. There's also going to be individual companies, individual segments of the economy that are going to come out of nowhere and create massive amounts of wealth and thrive and create things that we can't even yet imagine. I remind everybody that the FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, they didn't exist 30 years ago. Some of them didn't exist 25 years ago. So it's possible that we see things that are created. Not only possible, but probable. And that's what I'm here to talk about. That's what I'm here to talk about today. So, first thing I want you all to do, though, is I want you all to stand up. Everybody stand up. And I want you to take a deep breath. And a big exhale. And I'm really glad to see that you've all been trained to do exactly as you're told. Because that's what's happened in this cycle. Have a seat. What I want you to do, though, now, is I want you to open your mind. I want you to open your mind to the possibility that what I'm about to say might actually be reality. We've been convinced on an increasing basis that we are at the beginning of history's greatest economic boom, and I'm going to show you why. We're going to have unprecedented economic growth globally. We're going to have technology boost that will produce productivity, prosperity, and I'll show you why. Inflation, I'm sorry to tell all the folks that are worried about it, it continues to be DOA, and that the duration is driven by demographics. This is what I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to explain each one of them. And that if you stop, I should have brought a paper up with me. If you stop and you look at the Wall Street Journal or any other publication, that every single one of their concerns is a growing pain. Well, there's not enough lumber. Why is that? Yesterday, right outside, I did an interview on CNBC, and they wanted to know, what are we going to do? The port in Long Beach, LA is handling almost 38%, almost 40% more containers than they ever have. And we can't get enough stuff. Wait. What? It's handling almost 40% more than it's ever moved, and then we still don't have enough? That is the result of demand doing this. That's a problem? Excuse me, but it's not. Historians are going to call this period the Great Post-COVID Boom. Why is that? It's really simple. It's really simple because it's what we do as a society, and I'm going to explain why. In that process, we're going to do this. We're going to do all these things. We're going to still be the world leader. We're still going to be the world's, sorry, China, you're not going to overtake us. You heard about the demographics yesterday. I'll show you some of the more reasons behind that. We're going to be the largest, most prosperous economy. We're going to continue to be, as we all are already, the epicenter of technological innovation, both on the hardware and the software side. We may not necessarily make it all here, but we sure as hell design it here. Our exports are going to grow faster than our imports at such a pace that within the next 10 years, we will have a trade surplus, not a trade deficit, and we will be the world's largest exporter by the end of this decade. Sorry, Bitcoin, whose market cap, by the way, is less than Apple, think that through for a second, is not going to become the new reserve currency. The US dollar will continue to be. One of the reasons is because we have such a dynamic workforce. I'm going to talk about that. And, oh, by the way, we have leading edge transportation, supply chain, logistics. We're going to talk about all these things. So you're going to go home. You're going to go back to your family. You're going to go back to work. You're going to go to the gym, out to dinner with friends, to church, wherever. And they're going to go, wait a second. Didn't you all go didn't you go on a trip? Get on an airplane? Went to a conference? There are hundreds of people in a ballroom? No, well, you didn't get sick? You didn't get hospitalized? You lived? Okay. So what'd you learn? And you're going to tell them this. You're going to tell them that you heard this lunatic that predicted the sun was going to come out tomorrow, that the human race would actually survive. But wait, that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is that he predicted that it was not only highly possible but probable that it was going to be the largest economic boom ever. And they're going to be like, wait. That's complete lunacy. Because we've been told by companies selling solutions, organizations needing donations, catastrophes described by governments who are the only people that could protect us from those catastrophes, that all these things are out there that we need to be worried about. And all of these fears, all of these catastrophes have been repeatedly told to us by journalists who use the full power of their fancy degrees in English and literature and communications to dig deep reporting, figure out that if everybody's saying it, it must be true. That's the merit of every message out there. And what you're going to tell them is this. You're going to tell them these things. I'm going to tell you what's different. I'm going to tell you about transportation and what it's telling us about demand, technology, inflation, labor. These are the 5 things. This is what you're going to tell them. This is how you're going to explain how this lunatic might actually be right. So let's talk about it. First of all, I normally have no patience for people who say, well, it's different this time. I hate that. But what is important is saying, Mark Twain used to say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. So when I look at historical cycles, I look at the current period and I look at previous cycles and I say, okay, I know cycles tend to have patterns, but what is slightly different? And then that I can find really great value in. Make sense? Okay, good. So what's different? First of all, what's the same? After we survive, we celebrate. It's not an accident that post-World War I and the Spanish influenza, we had the Roaring '20s. It's not an accident that post-World War II, we had a global boom that lasted throughout the 50s and well into the 60s. It's because it's what we as a society do. If you survive the Holocaust, if you survive being shot at by the Nazis or whomever, when you get home, you go, wow, let's do something. A lot of times predicting economic cycles is basic math, finance, economics, but it's often really actually just sociology, anthropology. We have survived this cycle, and not only have we survived this cycle, but we've survived this cycle and are in better shape to celebrate globally than we've ever been. So we're going to do these things, and we're going to do these things in mass, and you're already seeing it. Household formation, marriage rates. It's already starting, and it's already starting on a global basis. So here's what we did. Let's look at the stats. First of all, we didn't bomb Germany into rubble. We didn't nuke Japan twice God bless Harry Truman. He learned how to play poker with the other merchants on the street that he sold shoes at in Independence, Missouri. We got them to agree to some really very unbelievable surrender terms because we were about to bomb Tokyo. The Japanese didn't know we didn't actually have a third bomb. But like I said, he knew how to play poker. But the bottom line is, despite all of that happening, and despite Germany was broken up by NATO and the USSR, the Soviet Union at the time, into two countries, yet Germany today is the fourth largest economy in the world, and really de facto it runs the EU. And Japan, within a couple of decades, was threatening us. They were going to take us over. Remember, back then it was not China that was going to take us over, it was Japan that was going to take us over. And that didn't work out, but nevertheless, they came from nothing into changing us. There's no retooling or retraining. We don't have to figure out how to take the boys who were driving tanks or shooting rifles and bring them home and teach them how to do something here. The other thing is the demographics are different. Combat kills young men, now young women as well. Spanish influenza killed young people, keep people in their 20s and their 30s. COVID, morbidity, is older people. So when we experienced these two previous periods that we survived and then celebrated from, we killed young people. And I'm not besmirching the value of older people's lives. I'd pay you tens of thousands of dollars to play another game of chess with my grandfather or have lunch with my grandmother. But the point is being that if they're retired, they're not producing as much anymore in the economy. They're also not consuming. My dad said this to me the other day. My dad's approaching his 80th birthday, and he said he'd just bought a pickup truck, and he said, "This is the last one that'll see me out." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He says, "Look how many miles I drive. And look, I drive it like an old man. By the time you'll want to take the keys away from me before I'll wear it out." And I realized he's right. Not only do you produce less in retirement, but you consume less. That's where the morbidity has been focused, has been concentrated. We didn't kill 20 and 30-year-olds who had decades of production and consumption ahead of them. So when I look at the stats, World War I killed 50 million people through the Spanish influenza, another 17 million in combat. That's 3.7% of the world's population. This time, again, we're getting World War II, 6 million were killed through the Holocaust, 75 million in combat, 3.5% of the world's population. What happened this time? So far, it's been a whopping 0.06% of the world's population. That'd be, if you look at these stats, you'd have to make the Spanish influenza equivalent with today, you'd have 290 million people, not 4.8 million people. That's the relevant magnitude that we're scared about, and we've changed everything in our lives about. Moreover, where is it focused? So you look at it and say, well, let's see, who's dying? Who's actually being affected by this? Spanish influenza was the 20 and 30-year-olds who died. This time it's retirees. Literally, 1.6%, less than 2%, are under the age of 40. Over 80% are over 65. 60% damn near are over 75. The truth of the matter is this is not, from a magnitude perspective, very large, the number of people, but from where it's focused demographically, it's not a net negative on the economy. In fact, arguably, many of those people are passing along funds, inheritance, to their children, their grandchildren. Their grandchildren are using it for down payments on houses. It's actually an economic positive for them to pass. Transportation, pricing, demand. Is it going to last? Yes, it's going to last. Demand's going to be there. And it's going to be there for a couple of reasons. One, because the demand's going to be so strong. And two, because, and I'll show you in many of these, I'll give you some examples, in mode after mode after mode, the very thing that's producing the demand is also competing with transportation for workers, so it's limiting capacity. The simplest example, of course, is fracking. The exact person that you would hire to run the rig, and the rig count's going like this, I'll show you the figures in a minute, is the person you'd love to hire to drive your flatbed. They're strong enough, they're able enough, they can get up, they could pick 80, 90 pounds up and put it up on a shelf, they can climb up there, they could tarp a load. That's exactly the person I want to hire to be on my rig. It's happening everywhere, and I'll show you why. So let's talk about it. Everybody's worried about supply chain. And supply chain, the problems we have now are going to get fixed, and they're going to get fixed for two basic reasons. One, the people, the number of talented people and the caliber of those people that are committed to this, that are in supply chain management functions, especially in this country, has never been higher than it is today. I will tell you that in the mid-'80s, when I first got out of undergrad, my first job was auditing freight bills. And the guy that they had me working for had gotten to be the traffic manager because he had started as a forklift driver and he'd shown up more often and more sober than any of his counterparts, and so they made him the traffic manager. And when I finally got the nerve up to say something to the guy who'd hired me, he said, "Well, you don't think I don't know that?" I go, "He doesn't know how to do a basic algebra problem. He drinks at lunch. He gives freight to the guy who took him out, he and his wife out to dinner last night, or whoever took him to the ball game." He goes, "You don't think I know that?" He goes, "In a regulated world, that's fine. But in a dereg world, I need nerds with computer skills and finance skills. So get your skinny ass out of my office, go back to your cube, and learn how to audit a freight bill. Because if you do, and you do it well, it's open field running." And he was right. 5 years later, I was the corporate distribution manager of a Fortune 500 company, and that should not happen. 27-year-olds should not be running multi-million-dollar freight budgets, but I did. Why? Because in a deregged world, if you go into business school at night and you got all the things I had from an educational perspective, and they're working 60, 70 hours a week, lo and behold, you figure out how to do this. I dreamed, and it's everyone else I knew, dreamed about electronic data interchange, EDI. If only I knew what my inventory was. Today, you know what your inventory is in real time. You know what your supplier's inventory is, and your supplier's inventories. You know what your customers' inventories are in real time. It's not just a dream anymore, it's a reality. So when somebody says, "Oh, we're gonna fix it," yeah, it's gonna get fixed. And it's gonna get fixed within the next year. However, in the period in which it is not getting fixed, it is leading to larger and larger amounts of pent-up demand. Pent-up demand that will drive the duration of the cycle longer. So if I can't buy a new car because they don't exist, does it take away the demand I have to buy that car? No. It just means I have to wait. And that's true in everything. I loved this. They were all excited. "Oh, the Suez Canal is blocked." Now it's not an issue. Funny how that got solved. It got worked around. "Oh, slam manufacturing." Yeah, guess what? More companies have more people with more talent, with more resources and tools to fix it. And they're going to. Demand is not coming from one of these segments. It's coming from all of these segments. And each of these segments, I'll show you, either the US is the number one or we're one of the world leaders in. Now, China, when I say onshoring is going to sell, when I say the supply chain is going to get shorter, that's the easiest prediction of the world because you really can't get shorter, right? I've used this before. You look at China, you used to dig a hole as a kid, and people say, what are you going to do, dig your way to China? Because you can't literally make the supply chain any further and still stay on the planet Earth. It is literally on the other side of the planet. So it has to come in. But it's going to come in. It was already happening, not because of tariffs, but because of technology. Because of technology that allowed us to eliminate what? Eliminate cost of labor, or make labor so productive that it didn't matter that China's labor was cheaper than ours or that Vietnam's labor was cheaper than China's. It didn't matter. It was already happening, one. Two, if you look at the components of a lot of the stuff that we're making over there, the Chinese assemble the iPhone, but if $400 is the price, the wholesale is the price of all the components going into it, wholesale price is $800, retail price is $1,200, $11 of it is Foxconn. $11 of it is the assembly and packaging by the Chinese. If that can be automated, and we want it here, we want it close, where we can fast cycle get it to us. So you're going to make it shorter. If I want to be able to click on something on Amazon and have it delivered to me tomorrow, or in Jeff Bezos' world this afternoon, because this is the world Amazon lives in. A good friend of mine now works for Google, but he worked directly for Bezos. And Bezos, he said, looks at the world this way, that 85% of the US lives within 20 minutes of a Walmart. That means they can get in their car, drive, go to the Walmart, get whatever they need, walk out, drive home, and be home within an hour with what they need. And so he told everybody there, he said, I heard him rant about this many times. In order to go get Walmart, in order to steal their business, we got to be able to get it to the point where somebody can click on our website, and an hour later, somebody knocks at their door. And if we can do that, we can eat their lunch. That's where they're going, and that's why they're going there. But in order to do that, I need to be able to have things closer by than China. And this is important. This is important because it will drive domestic ton miles at an outsized pace. Because not only do you have to have it here, but when you make it here, you explode domestic miles. You've heard, anybody who's seen me present has heard me talk about this before, but bear with me because it's worth repeating. If I make the car here, I ship metallurgical coal and iron ore from the mines to the steel plant, steel from the steel plant to the parts plant, parts from the parts plant to the assembly plant, from the assembly plant to the dealership. I get a multiplication of freight moves. If I import the car, I do what? I move it from the port to the dealership. That's at one freight move. And there's dozens and dozens, hundreds of other examples. If I make it here, I explode domestic ton miles. Does that make sense? That's why it's going to happen. That's why our demand is going to be there. And that demand is going to be met by you and everybody who does what you do. And you're going to have an ongoing challenge to do so. Now, you might say at first, gosh, that's going to be hard to follow. That's going to be hard to predict. Well, you know what? I'm going to argue that it's not. Let me tell you a little story. This is the Federal Reserve map. When FedEx was first founded in 1973, the original idea, FedEx, Federal Express, was that if you wrote a check on a San Francisco bank and it got deposited in Boston, New York, or on a New York bank and it got deposited in Dallas or San Francisco, it might take 5 to 7 days to clear. Now, when interest rates are at 10%, the carrying cost on $1 billion is $400,000 a day. Okay, $400,000 a day, is that really a big deal? Well, at 1973, when Fred started FedEx, the average float in the US banking system at the time on uncleared checks was $6.6 billion. So that's more than $2.6 million a day in interest, carrying costs. That's almost $1 billion a year. Then, in today's dollars, that's $6 billion. And so Fred thought, well, I'll fix this. I'll get these little jets and I'll fly all these checks back and forth and I'll reduce that and it'll be worth it to them to pay me to fly the checks around. And then, of course, what happened is we got ACH, automated clearinghouses. Federal Reserve stepped in. And so Fred had to pivot, and he had to start FedExing important documents and contracts that needed to be signed. And then, of course, fax machines came along, and they became ubiquitous. And that was before Adobe, and the value to density of a document became infinite, right? But he pivoted, and he pivoted again, and you might say, gee, that's really hard to predict. It might be really hard to go from this. How's he actually still in business? Not only is he in business, but he's taken over the world. He's in the process of being, he continues to be even more so, one of the most powerful transportation companies in the globe. And the reason is because when you talk to him, he'll talk about, he's had 10 children, 9 of them living. He'll talk about them. He'll talk about his tennis game last night. He'll talk about football. He loves football. But if you really want to engage him, talk about what you think the world's going to look like in 30 years. That's what he gets all excited about. And what's interesting about that and why he's able to predict it is based upon the value of density of the goods. And I challenge you all to do this. Look at your customer profiles, the profiles of your customers and what they make, what they ship. The higher the value, the lower the density of what they're moving, the more growth they have. And the more they're going to be willing to pay you for service. And it's really very simple. Goods are becoming higher in value and lower in density in their very nature. 2, all of the new goods we're creating are high value, low density. And 3, an iPhone gets replaced quickly. The cement and steel is there for an investable lifetime. The durability, disposability paradox. And between those 3 factors, people will look at global air freight and say, well, over the last couple of decades, it's grown at 2x worldwide GDP. It's grown at 2x world trade, and that's not sustainable. And I say, oh, yes, it is. In fact, it'll grow even faster because this is the nature of the goods. The density is your destiny. And the higher the value, the lower the density of the good, the more important it is that you get it where you want it, when you want it, without it being lost, stolen, or damaged, so the more willing you are to pay for service. If you're moving coal, the largest cost of goods in the cost of goods delivered, the largest cost is the cost of delivery. If you're moving an iPhone, in the cost of goods delivered, the cost of delivery is this. If it doubles, so it doesn't matter. I just get it where it needs to be. Change the way you think about it. The post office is not going to exist in less than 5 years. They've already sold and done sale leasebacks of every important asset they had. Their volume has gone down dramatically. Think about 10 years ago when you walked away from your mailbox, you had what? $10 of revenue? Now you have no revenue. Nobody gets statements in the mail anymore. We get them electronically. Nobody gets first-class mail anymore. I don't go to my mailbox but once every couple of days, and I throw 90% of it away. It's going to go away. I would point out also, Biden yesterday, when he had the port and FedEx and UPS and you've got to do this, fix this, notice he didn't invite the postmaster to help. Why? Because even Joe Biden knows they're irrelevant. E-commerce, what happens also is, used to be Walmart, you'd have 100 dock doors coming in, 100 dock doors coming out. It was homogeneous loads coming in and diverse loads going out to each of the stores in their DCs. That's the way they were structured. Today, a fulfillment center, you have homogeneous loads coming in, and you have 10 dock doors coming in, and you have 80 dock doors going out, because you take each one of those things, you wrap it in bubble wrap and put it in a box too big. Volumes and e-commerce are going to triple in the next 5 years, and the volume of that I know these are short miles, 50 miles, less than 100 miles, that fulfillment, but that volume and the short stuff is going to explode. And that drives demand, and that drives pricing. Technology. Interesting thing about technology. We all know technology drives productivity. Agreed? Great, okay. What happens, and Gordon Moore was right, it keeps doubling. And you can see how it, it doubles the speed every 18 months, every 20 months. Okay, fine, great, we all know that. But the real thing it does is it makes markets more visible. It allows us to see what's happening. Price discovery is very, 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 it gets easier and easier. And not just price discovery, it's quality discovery. And so middlemen get knocked out of the box. They're gone, which is deflationary, which lowers cost. And that continues to happen. Labor, I used to say this, you've seen it in my presentations before, you can work from anywhere. Really? Not just get the Dell service guy to talk to you from India. Hello, have you turned off the computer and turned it back on? No. But everybody. And productivity continues to increase. This is all true now. But not only is it true, but it's more widely and widely and widely accepted. Agriculture, we're the most productive. I'll show you the data. Manufacturing, fracking, all these things continue to be true. In fact, quite frankly, the only thing you seem to be able to get any inflation on are things that are subsidized by the government. Look at this. Average hourly earnings, because we're more productive, we can pay people more. Everything above that line are subsidized heavily by the state and federal governments. You want to produce inflation? Get the feds involved. Or as Ronald Reagan once said, some of the most dangerous words ever heard by any American businessman is, we're the government and we're here to help. So we're the global leader in all of these things, and that's amazing. But what's really also amazing is this. If you look at it, there's a guy named Toffler. Alvin Toffler. Alvin and his lovely wife, Heidi, wrote a bunch of books. They're all really great books. I recommend them. Read most of them. But the most important one that he's known for is called Future Shock. And the reason that it was important, the reason the best way, and some of the stuff he wrote in it was, he was a futurist. He was trying to predict the future, which means some of the stuff he came up with is going to be wrong. But one of the things he said that really is valuable is that technology has 3 stages. The first stage is you can do it in a lab. Watson, come here. First phone call. Second stage is you can do it in mass, the Model T. You can do it in mass so that it's cheap and everybody can have access to it. And the third stage, he theorized, was that you would actually accept it into your lives. And that the first stage and second stage would actually feed on each other and they would generate a parabolic curve of increase. And they would get faster and faster. More and more level 1 moments would happen, and more faster and faster we would turn them into level 2 moments. And that is so far held true. But there would be a limit. There was a limit on the level 3, on how fast we would adopt technology, even if it was widely available cheaply, into our lives. Many of you have heard me talk about this before, but what's here and what's different in this time frame than other time frames is what? We are force-fed by Corona, by reactions to it, to adopt technology in wholesale mass acceleration of it. Think about it. 80, 90-year-old people who previously, 2 years ago, did not know how to turn on a computer, now know how to get on the intranet and do a Zoom call with their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren. I see it in my own behavior. I used to go through a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a grocery store, and I'd pick out my stuff, and I would say, I spent all this time picking all this stuff out, you can check me out. Now, I don't want to deal with you. I just want to scan it and be gone. And I'm a gardener. I like to grocery shop. I like to pick out my produce. But even I have gone to the point where I'll use Instacart. None of those Instacart jobs were out there before this happened. DoorDash, Uber Eats, new jobs. Used to be the only thing you got delivered, the only food you got delivered was what? Chinese and pizza. True? But now you'll get anything delivered. And the restaurateurs the restaurants I go to, I talk to the guys and gals who run those restaurants, who own those restaurants, and I ask them about their business. And they have all told me that, yeah, the DoorDash, the Uber Eats saved them during COVID. But even now, as they're letting diners back in, that business has stopped growing at such a pace, but it's not declining. They're not cannibalizing that business, which generates, think about this, another one of those examples. A restaurant uses to make your meal stuff that's on the perimeter of the grocery store, right? Produce, meat, dairy, things that what? Get delivered via reefer, correct? And I interview Uber guys, I interview those drivers, and a lot of them tell me they used to be truck drivers, but they can be home now every night. So it's confining capacity, and it's generating demand. And why is it generating demand? Because you think about it, if you eat 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, that's 21 meals a week, right? If I move one of them from where most of us shop in the middle of the grocery store, which is drive-in. If you move one of those meals from the inside of the grocery store to the outside, because I'm getting the meal fresh from a restaurant, that's what? 4.5% share shift? Not a big deal to the drive-in guys, but it's a big deal to the reefer guys. And so reefer has stronger pricing than any of the other modes in truckload right now. I wonder why that is. Because their demand's doing this, for one of the reasons being what I just described, and their capacity is being constrained because they're offering an alternative to the guys and gals who might otherwise be reefer drivers. Make sense? Technology was used to create COVID solutions everywhere. It was forced, and it was going to give us productivity. It's going to give us and this is what's going to happen. Technology produces productivity, productivity produces prosperity. And it's been accelerated in its adoption, and it's been true everywhere. Not just here, but in Germany, and in China, and in Japan, and in South Korea, and in Singapore, and in Italy, and you name a place, it's been there. And we've had all of this significant monetary policy. Guess what? What do we do with that? We use it to buy a lot of things that'll make us even more productive. And that productivity gives us this marketplace visibility, and marketplace visibility does what? If you see, Adam Smith was right, you get that marketplace visibility. If somebody's charging a nickel more than someone else, and it's the same quality product, I don't buy it from him, I buy it from him. You see it already. And that gets us to the next thing, inflation. Inflation, you've seen this data before, I only have 100 plus years of it, and this is what it's been doing. And you can go back and look at the old data. It used to be money supply pushed inflation up and inflation money down. It used to be central bankers were really good at creating inflation and even pretty decent at killing it. They were very good at it. And they continued to be pretty good at it up until through the 70s. And then Moore's Law began to take over. And bigger and bigger and bigger changes in money supply produced ever smaller responses in the inflation rate, to the point where we have these massive, massive increases in money supply in 2009. Massive increases. Yeah, that's 105%. And inflation doesn't budge. Okay, well, Donald, but it seems to have budged a little bit. There's a little bit of tail at the very end. Used to work, doesn't work now. Well, what's this little tail here? Okay, this is a percentage. And I'll explain why that's ridiculous in a minute. Here's what's been going on. I can look back over the last 20 years. Our income has grown almost twice the pace that inflation has. That's a good thing. Why? Because the labor is more productive, and hence you can pay more for it. This is wealth being created. When the rate at which you get paid goes up at a pace twice at which you got to pay for the things you have to pay for to live, that means you're better off. Sorry, AOC, you're wrong. The data says otherwise. That's the gap, the nominal gap between the amount our income has gone up and the amount what it costs to live has gone up. These are the nominal numbers. And I put them same, if you look at them, those are the same scales. There's the same disparity, percentage disparity between the top and the bottom. So I'm not lying with charts here. Now, if I look at it shorter, I look at just the last couple of years, I see the same stats, twice the pace. And I look at it like this. You see it again on a nominal basis. Our income has dramatically outpaced the price of the things it costs us to live. Here comes the fun part. And yeah, I love Mark Twain. Easier to fool people than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. Once somebody believes something that's wrong, it takes a lot of time and effort to prove to them that they were fooled. But unfortunately, most of them did not learn in the 5th grade the basic thing you're supposed to learn in 5th grade math, and that is this. 100 goes to 50, that's a 50% reduction. In order for 50 to go back to 100, you need a 100% increase. So when in April of 2000, prices did this, and they went down by 4%, for them to go back up by 4% in April of 2021, it's inflation. No, it's not. It means you didn't study 5th grade math. On a nominal basis, that's the consumer price index. On a nominal basis. If I take it and I zoom up this so you can see the slope, I zoom up the axis on a nominal basis, and I lay over it 2.5% trend line, guess what? That's what happened on a nominal basis. We're just back to where we were. Prices went down on a nominal basis, and therefore on a percentage basis, what? Down 50? Got to be up 100. Make sense? Great. And we see this pattern again and again. If you actually read the releases, what's interesting in the releases is they will tell you things that are just unbelievable. One of the first things they'll tell you is that they don't know how to adjust. How do you adjust? How do you seasonally adjust for a COVID Christmas in which everybody's supposed to stay at home? How does that work? Not only can you not do that, but if you look, again, if you read in every one of the CPI, the Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI reports, it says this: they can't get the data. It's unavailable. Because of COVID, we had to change the way we're operating. So you really can't trust the data we're giving you. Oh, so I should be really concerned about it. Come again? Okay, great. The other thing they tell you, which is amazing, is that, well, we're keeping our cars a little longer. Because why? Because we can't find a good new car. And if you look at the results, month after month after month, a third, we all know why you can't get a car, right? We'll get to that in a minute. Our chips aren't there, can't make them right. So used cars are going up. And here's the two biases. One, the demand for used cars has gone up because I can't get a new car. But also, if I can't get a new car and I'm going into the used car market to buy one instead, what am I going to do? Am I going to buy a 15-year-old, 20-year-old car? Or am I going to buy a 5-year-old car? That skews the price of the used car. But a third of the inflation number I was supposed to be concerned about is being driven by the price of used cars. I'm sorry, folks, but I'm just not going to believe that worldwide global runaway inflation is going to be fueled by the price of used cars. Sorry, not buying today. And if you look deeper, it's motor fuel. We know why the price of fuel went down in April of 2000. And so on a year-over-year basis, when you see a 50%, 48, 49%, whatever increase in the price of fuel, well, duh. Thank you, Sherlock, for that penetrating glimpse into the obvious. Too good to be true. Is it really that true? Well, let's see. Look at bond markets. They're all concerned. Housing values going up, freight values going up. Can this really, and you get these headlines that just tell you. And I will ask you very carefully to read these headlines. And I will ask you to look at the source of the inflation and break it out. Is it commodities, which have a lot of demand? Is it labor? What is it? What's driving? Look at the base of it, and it'll help you reduce the fear. It'll help you analyze and be as non-pulsed by it as I am. Because these kinds of headlines are enough to scare anybody. You can't look at that and not think, well, maybe there really is something. And the answer is, when we see demand for something and commodity prices go up, what do? Adam Smith was right. Free markets work. If the pricing for trucking services goes up by 50, 100%, what do? You spend a lot of time and effort trying to find more trucks, more drivers to satisfy that demand because there's money to be made. The commodity crunch blamed on stingy capital spending. Well, yeah. When the pricing was doing this, people pulled back and didn't invest. But guess what? It's now doing this, so guess what? We're going to invest. And so you have these things happen. Copper's getting invested in, lumber's getting invested in, everything's getting invested in, and it changes the world. And the next thing you know, things like, oh my God, I can't find hand sanitizer. Now it's everywhere. They're giving it away. That's what markets do. That's how it works. Gold sinks, dollar rallies. And oh, by the way, we can argue about this later if you want, but Bitcoin, Dogecoin, if there really was runaway inflation and these things really had value, they wouldn't be going down in value, they'd be going up in value. But I'm going to tell you, you heard it here first, I don't know when, I don't know how it comes to an end, but it is a fraud wrapped with a fad wrapped around it. Because when anybody tells me two opposite polar things are true, I know they're lying to me. And again, that's what crypto does. Oh, it's completely anonymous, but there's a ledger. Which is it? Am I enabling organized crime and the drug trade, or is it going to be audited? Which is it? Well, you got to be able to move stuff around. I can click with my mouse on my phone. I can move hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars around from account to account without any trouble in US dollars right now. I don't need crypto to do that. Oh, well, there's a limited supply. Oh, well, but you can also mine for it. Which is it? It's a fraud. Interest rates. Oh, this looks alarming. Oh, I should be scared about this. Really? Well, step back and look at a little perspective. We're still way below where we were pre-COVID. And if I look back over this period, a couple of decades, we're still at an inconsequential rate to borrow money. If you've got a good idea, you got a good business, you can get money, there's plenty of it, and you can get it cheaply. All right, last but not least, labor. Oh, I can't find me. Guess what? You don't exist. You're 40, 50, 60 years old and you're running a business, you don't exist in a 20-year-old. I don't look like when I was 20, I don't look like I did today. It took hundreds of thousands of hours of work, making tens of thousands of mistakes to become who I am. And the same is true for all of you. Find the person who looks like you did when you were 20 and hire them. And change the way you're going after them. I love to talk about this. Greenspan was once asked, what was the most significant thing that Reagan ever did for the U.S. economy? And he said it was this. It was to fire the U.S. air traffic controllers because they were government employees unionized. And if you can fire a unionized government employee, you can fire anybody. And in the period since then, the U.S. workforce has steadily become the most flexible, the fastest to retrain themselves, the most adaptable of any workforce on the planet. That continues to be true, and it continues to get more so true. Take advantage of it. 1. 2, use it to help build who you want to be. Find these people. They've changed. I used to find a job, and I'll bet you everybody else in this room, damn near, found your first job or one of your first jobs where in the one ads. My sons don't even know what a one ad is. If I want to find them, I have to use the way they find information. And so do so. And find the people you want. Find the people, but find it in a way they will respond to. If you want them, that's how you find them. And guess what? It's a marketplace that's very, very penetratable. It's very visible. They put on Facebook and Instagram and other places, they put everything about them. Favorite sports teams, things they like to do, their hobbies, the books they read, the music they listen to. They put everything about them in there. So 1, you can go find them. A marketing person's dream of data is out there on these people. So go use it, 1. And then 2, use it to continue to let them know you care. You're in touch with them. Realistically, tell them so. Learn how to communicate like they do. Learn what their want ads are, and you can find them. This is my son. I'm very proud of him. I love him to death. He's one of my best friends, in part because he's just as batshit crazy as I am. And in part because this is a couple of years ago, this is pre-COVID, we were in Utah, and I said, you know, this is the longest day of the year, it's June the 21st, and there's enough snow, we can go skiing. And he's like, oh my God, Dad, that's great. Up at Snowbird, they got no snow. The conditions weren't optimal by any means, but he goes, well, if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it in shorts. And so we did. But he started, he was a damn good wrestler, very dominant wrestler in high school, and went on to be a collegiate wrestler. And he took that and he converted it into a company in which he's cornering for MMA fighters, and he's producing social media for MMA fighters and the Olympic team and this vast network. And if he had come to me 10 years ago and said, Dad, this is what I want to do, I'd have said, I don't know how you're going to make a living. You're going to starve. You can't really. But you know what? I did his taxes last year. He's crushing it. Literally, this year alone, he's been to Guatemala for the Pan Am Games. He's been to Poland. He's just got back from Oslo, Norway. He was supposed to go to Tokyo, but they said they canceled his press passes because you only go there if you were the athlete or the coach. New economy exists. Figure out what it looks like, how they think, and go get them, because they're there. Sustainable. Like I said, it's coming from all these places. I'm going to go fast, so get ready. Fracking. We've gone from being dependent upon Saudi Arabia and Russia in 2009, when we figured out fracking, to today, we are bigger than Saudi Arabia by a factor of Kuwait, and bigger than Russia by an even larger, by a couple of Kuwaits. And guess what? Oil being where oil is, and we're going to do what? We're going to frack. We're going to drill. Drill, baby, drill. And that drives jobs. That drives a lot of activity. 1. 2, we know how to do it. This is buddy Boone Pickens. Boone's like, source rock's everywhere. Can't convince me the source rock's different and just below the Rio Grande than it is here, yet we're fracking here, we're not fracking here. Why? Because we own it. Everywhere in the world. The largest source of natural gas in the world in frackable source rock is under China, where natural gas is $25 an MCF. In Europe, there's a shortage. It's 5-6 times the cost. What's going to happen? We're going to do it for them. We do it so well, we burn it off. You've seen me do this before. We burn off so damn much of it, it looks like a city. That's going to change. We're that good at it. And so what happens is the price of oil goes up, and the rig count's going to go up. And it's easy for me to stand up here and go and say, well, gee, it's going to double in the next year. It'll probably be 2.5 times in 18 months. That's an easy prediction. Why? Because it's good old-fashioned economics. It's going to happen everywhere. It's happening in railroads. You look at the volume, it goes up. It's being contained by things, supply chain problems. But the demand's there, and those supply chain problems drive that demand, drive that duration, drive that pin-up, right? It's everywhere you look. It's car chemicals, it's metal carloads. We have the highest metal carload moving, the highest steel mill orders in 9 years. We're never going to build another steel plant. Steel's dead in the U.S. Really? Guess what? They're bringing on new steel plants. They're building new steel plants. And those new steel plants are going to be more efficient than any ever before. And we're going to be competitive in the steel market again. Globally, get ready. Can't make enough cars. Guess what? That point right there, when we had the cars, is one of the highest. Only 3 months in the previous 45 years we sold this many cars. Everybody looks at the number. Oh, well, we had this drop. We're coming back. We're almost to the level. No, because what happens is when you fall short, pent-up demand grows. And as pent-up demand grows, literally, we're almost 40 million cars behind. What does that mean? Does that mean we'll make it up in 2022? No, it means it'll take us 3 years to catch up. What are you going to do with 3 years of strong auto production? I think that'll make some truckers pretty happy, right? Yes? No? I think it will. Auto carloads, you can't make enough. Well, guess what? You're going to. But you can't because of the chips. The chips are going to get fixed. Why? Because the demand's there, the greed's there, and so what's going to happen is this. Intel, they're going to invest $95 billion. That's billion with a B. Do you think there might be more chips available a couple years from now? Yeah, I think so. It's going to get fixed. It's markets. Construction. There are more millennials than boomers. And they're going in fuego buying houses. That's great. So when you look at the R squared, you look at this is happening. Get ready. And what happens when you buy a house is you have to fill it with things. It costs you a ton of money to turn the house into a home. Nothing drives consumer spending like getting a missus. You buy dust ruffles. You buy things you didn't know you needed, but it makes your life more comfortable. And we all laugh about it a little bit nervously because you know it's true. But it's happening, and it's driving volume. And you see it. Lumber prices, lumber prices forever were $300 to $500 per 1,000 cubic feet. You can go back several decades. And then they go through the roof, they go to $1,500. Right? What's going to happen? Well, at $1,500 per 1,000 square feet, there's a bunch of loggers who said, well, maybe we should go cut down some trees. And a bunch of sawmill owners who said, well, maybe we should fire up some of that unused capacity and run our kilns 24 hours a day. And guess what happens? Lumber is back down already. Already lumber is back down. Didn't take another 18 months. It took this. Markets work. And real time, we can see what everybody's doing in those markets because of the technology we have. So guess what? Those houses are going to get built. And those houses are going to become homes as people fill them with things that identify them. That's the way the world works. Ag. The darker colors mean you're the most productive per acre, per whatever. So pick something. Maize, rice, soybeans, cereals in general, potatoes, tomatoes, lettuce. Pick something. Almonds. We produce it more efficiently than anyone else does. And so guess what? We're going to do so. This is corn grain yield per acre in the US. Technology works in everything. And this will continue. And this is, you can plot it on rice and a bunch of other things, and you see the exact same thing. And we're going to export more and more of it. We already do. We're going to export a lot more of it. And what's that going to do? It's going to drive rail demand. Railroads love, and what do farmers do? They buy pickup trucks, and they buy fertilizer, and they buy combines and tractors. And those carloads keep going up. Carloads keep going up. And when freight flows are all doing this, what does it mean? Does it mean the economy is contracting and I should be worried about a recession coming? Or does it mean the economy is booming? Every one of those freight flows is doing that. Air freight, Eurozone air freight, was the worst it had been since '09, and it's already back. 1 year, 2 year charts. It just came shy of hitting a whole new high. Asia Pacific, this is what gave us the alarm sign, told us to write a report in February of 2020 saying that this could be as calamitous as the 08-09. We put that in a report. We went full on bear. I'm not always this bullish. And guess what? It's back to new highs. It's established new highs, and it tracks with semiconductors. And semiconductors are going what? Through the roof. Why? Because there's demand and because everybody's building for it. Long Beach, LA, through the roof. Oh, we got to deal with 40% more. That's a good thing. Purchasing managers know, but we'll never get it done. Guess what has happened in the last 6 months? The number, this is now 220, 222, I think it is, the last time a new number I saw. Orders for container ship are surging. They build all these container ships. What's going to happen? There's going to be enough capacity. That's the way markets work. And so this will get done. Our retail sales risk indicator says it's never been higher. Look at dry van. Dry van is at areas that are we were hitting 18, and so is pricing. Look at reefer. It's at levels it's never been for seasonally higher than everything, and so is pricing. Flatbed, same sort of thing, and so is pricing. So it all boils down to this. These are the predictions before. Trump's going to run. I was wrong about that. I was right about that. I was right about that. Not right about that yet. It's getting there. That's right. That was easy. That's true. And that's definitely true. Now what do I think? Very simple. all these things I've said. That's what I think. And that's where we're going. Get ready. It's going to be the greatest economic boom of our lifetimes. Thank you.